The assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump in September 2024 has sparked a renewed debate about political rhetoric, violence, and free speech. A man armed with an AK-47 set up a sniper position hundreds of yards from Trump's location in Florida and was apprehended after a brief chase. In the aftermath, media figures like NBC's Lester Holt questioned whether Trump's rhetoric might have provoked the attack, asking if he would tone it down. This narrative raises crucial questions about free speech, political discourse, and responsibility for violent acts. Blaming Trump for an attempt on his life because of his rhetoric is both absurd and dangerous, as long as we believe in civil discourse and free expression. The suggestion implies that provocative speech justifies violence in some part. In a democratic society, people should be able to express controversial or unpopular opinions without fear of violent retaliation. If people are considered responsible for violence directed at them because of their words, then free speech is under threat for all parties, and we should consider the consequences of widespread conflict. Political violence should always be condemned, regardless of who the target is. Whether it's Donald Trump or Vice President Kamala Harris, violence should never be seen as an acceptable response to speech. Although Senator J.D. Vance stated that we could all do our parts in toning down the rhetoric, we should not feel that challenging mainstream narratives necessarily invites harm. Trump's rhetoric has certainly been polarizing, often sparking strong reactions from both supporters and critics. However, to argue that his words alone incite violence oversimplifies the relationship between speech and action. In a healthy democracy, people will naturally disagree, sometimes vehemently. The solution to controversial speech is not censorship, but more speech, encouraging dialogue and debate, even when the rhetoric is heated or uncomfortable. Media narratives that focus on Trump's rhetoric as the cause of violence ignore the complexities of political discourse. By framing Trump's words as inherently dangerous, the media risks stifling important conversations about power, politics, and society. If people are afraid to express themselves because they might face violent consequences, then they don't live in a free society. The key to managing divisive rhetoric is not to silence it, but to foster an environment where ideas can be debated openly and peacefully. Trump is often labeled a divisive figure, and his rhetoric has certainly drawn clear lines between different political and ideological groups. But being divisive is not inherently negative. In a pluralistic society, division is natural as people hold different views about how the country should be governed. Transparent disagreement and debate are essential components of democracy, and they often involve strong, conflicting opinions. Trump's direct and provocative language appeals to millions of Americans, particularly those who feel left behind by globalist projects. His message of putting America first has been criticized for being exclusionary, but it also reflects the concerns of many who feel their country's values are being undermined. While Trump's rhetoric is polarizing, it taps into real anxieties and frustrations within the electorate. The media's portrayal of Trump as uniquely divisive overlooks the fact that political leaders throughout history have used provocative rhetoric to challenge the status quo. One of the most hotly contested issues has been immigration, especially regarding the resettlement of refugees from countries like Haiti. Trump and his supporters have raised concerns about the cultural and economic impact of resettling large numbers of refugees into small American towns. Critics often dismiss these concerns as xenophobic, but they reflect a broader fear that mass immigration, without proper assimilation, can lead to social tension and conflict. Small towns, in particular, may not have the infrastructure or resources to handle the sudden arrival of thousands of refugees. Trump's emphasis on controlled immigration and the importance of assimilation echoes the concerns of many Americans who worry that their communities could be overwhelmed by large-scale resettlements. For residents in smaller towns, the rapid influx of refugees can feel disruptive, and those concerns should not be dismissed out of hand. Assimilation is a slow and complex process, especially for refugees coming from countries with drastically different cultures and economic conditions. For people from places like Haiti or Venezuela, Adapting to life in the United States involves more than just learning English. It requires adjusting to a new set of social norms and cultural expectations, which can take years or even generations. Cultural differences between the global North and global South can create friction, especially in small communities where the arrival of thousands of refugees may overwhelm local resources. Trump's rhetoric on immigration, though often portrayed as inflammatory, highlights a legitimate concern how to manage large-scale immigration in a way that allows for successful assimilation without overburdening host communities. The debate surrounding Donald Trump's rhetoric, the media's response, and the political violence directed at him highlights deeper issues around free speech, political polarization, and immigration. Blaming Trump for the assassination attempt because of his rhetoric sets a dangerous precedent, implying that controversial speech can justify violence. This undermines the foundational principle of free speech in a democratic society, and if we are to undermine that, then we are treading in dangerous waters. Political violence must be condemned in all cases, and no one should be held accountable for violence directed at them because of their words. A society that values free speech must allow for open, sometimes uncomfortable, discourse without fear of violent retaliation. The solution to divisive rhetoric is not to silence it, but to foster more debate, ensuring that ideas can be expressed freely and peacefully, leading to newfound avenues of unity.